And welcome to the December 2016 edition of City Connection. This is the live call-in program where you, citizens of Grand Rapids, can ask Mayor Rosalind Bliss about local issues. With Community Media Center, I'm Linda Galash. City Connection is broadcasting live today, December 5th, 2016, on Community Media Center's GRTV Livewire Channel 24, streaming live as well at therapidian.org. Also on today's show, we talk about affordable housing. Mayor Bliss's guest will be Monica Steinle-App. Talk a little bit more about that at 1:15 the hour. Many ways you can get involved. You can get involved by taking part in the conversation. You can give us a call here with your questions in the second half of the show. You can do that by calling 616-459-4881, emailing cityconnection@grcmc.org. You can send tweets to @GRTV Access, Facebook, the same thing, GRTV Access, and then again, streaming live at therapidian.org. Mayor Bliss, welcome to City Connection for December.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here. I can't believe it's December.
It's fast. It's happening fast. Well, last month you weren't here, but we had a special City Connection that focused on voter rights. Some great information from ACLU of Michigan, talked about voter rights, the election process, and all of that. So we're post-election now.
We are.
With that being the case, you issued a statement about a week after the election. I wanted you to just talk a little bit about that. What prompted that?
Yeah. So what prompted it was hearing from residents, hearing from people who've had, or who had at that time, contacted me sharing experiences they had in the city where they felt hostility, threats, largely based on their race or their sexual orientation. And I just felt compelled to say something as mayor. I just felt like I needed to call on the community to join me to say, that's not okay, not in our community. I get it, I understand, I appreciate the really divisive election that we just went through and the strong feelings that people had about the outcome of the election. But we can do better. We need to do better. And that kind of hatefulness is not okay in our city. We are a kind, compassionate city. And so I asked the community to join me in that and to be a part of coming together. And then I let people know about resources. A lot of people contacted me and they said, I want to know how I get involved, what's going on in our community, particularly around racial equity. A lot of people weren't familiar that there's actually a lot of people working on racial equity in our community, a lot of organizations. So I shared a lot of that information individually with people. And then I obviously included it in my public statement. And then I worked with our Community Relations Commission, talked to them about what we can do. They're the commission that the City Commission appoints to really look at issues around equity. And so I called on them. They also issued a statement. And then I know that they're actively listening and working on what we can do as a community to really continue to do the hard work of being more inclusive and welcoming.
So this is maybe 3 or 4 weeks, since election and 3 weeks since your letter to the citizens, and I wanted to see what have you seen happen since then? Do you see some rallying of sorts of support, and what's going on here in Grand Rapids?
Yeah, I do. There are so many things I love about our city, but what I love most are the people here. And what I've seen since then is people stepping up, and they want to get engaged and they want to get involved. And I've had people reach out to me and they've said, I've never ever been engaged in anything political in my life, and now I feel called to do that. I feel like I have to be actively engaged to make sure that we're a place for everyone. That some of the divisiveness that we see, even at the state level sometimes, but particularly at the national level, that we do better, that we don't let that impact our local community. And so that's been hopeful to me, that's been reassuring to me. And I think people are wanting to get involved, wanting to get engaged. I've heard a lot from young people saying, even young people who can't vote yet, they'll say, I can't vote yet, but I want to get engaged. How do I do that? And I think there's an energy out there. And what I've said to a number of young people that I've met with who are angry, I've said, take that energy and turn it into something positive. like step up and get involved and get engaged. And here are some ways that you can do that.
You did mention that maybe people didn't already know a lot of the diversity and inclusion efforts that are going on in Grand Rapids. So go ahead, feel free to mention some of those.
Yeah,
some great organizations.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the ones that I directed people to was a meeting that I knew was coming up with the Grand Rapids GRIN, the Grand Rapids Inclusion Network. And then also there's the Racial Equity Drinks. They meet regularly. Our Community Relations Commission, they're always having, in the past 6 months, I would say they've had 3 public meetings, giving people an opportunity to come and get engaged. You know, there's a Latino network that's actively working and looking at how do we support our Latino community and leadership within our Latino community. So there's a lot of good work. Hispanic Center is leading the charge on a number of initiatives. People can get involved there and volunteer and get engaged.
So for many decades, Grand Rapids at times has been known for being a leader, a forerunner in inclusion efforts. What do you see for our future? Do you think, I mean, you joined a number of mayors that took public stands on civility at the very least.
Yeah.
What's our future?
Yeah, I mean, this comes at a time where I've spent a lot of my time this past year working on racial equity issues. We're part of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and I know you and I have talked about that in the past, and we're looking at what we can do to diversify boards and commissions right at the city. We're looking at embedding a racial equity toolkit within what we do at the city, both for policy decisions and budget decisions. So we're looking at what we can do. And then there's a growing community looking at racial disparities and racial equity. And so I think if people are interested in getting involved, there's a place for them. They just have to find a good fit for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of other bullet points for this past month, things that have come up. One thing is new water and sewer rates here in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
It has to happen at times, and it's happening in 2017.
Yeah, so we do this. We do a rate study every year. We have a really specific rate study methodology that we utilize. And it's very clear how we make rate adjustments. Sometimes it's based on infrastructure needs, sometimes it's a mix of usage and capacity, and so yes, that rate study just came out. We adjusted rates. But overall, I think what residents should know is that we have a really good water system here, and we have that because we have stable funding and we have solid rates. But it's also it's a partnership. We have other users of our water system. Speaking of water, though, I should give you an update, because I believe earlier this year I talked to you about our intent to build a solar panel field at the Butterworth landfill. And we were plugging along with that plan, and we were utilizing a third-party company that would actually install the solar panels. And because the Butterworth landfill is across the river from the wastewater treatment facility, we were working with a number of federal departments, including the Army Corps, to figure out a way to run the energy across the river, and if we had to go under the river, or so. Anyway, in the last couple months, that whole plan has kind of fallen apart, and largely because of the third-party company that we were working with. So we're regrouping, and we're in the process of doing 2 things, because we still have the goal of generating renewable energy to support what the energy we use at the city, but also to get to our 100% renewable energy goal. So what we're doing now at the wastewater treatment facility is that we're looking to build a biodigester, and then we'll determine how much energy we're able to generate from the biodigester through creating methane, and then we will supplement with solar panels, but we're looking at likely doing that right on site at the wastewater treatment facility instead of doing it across the river, just so we don't have the challenge of trying to get the energy across the river. So it's just an update on that. Okay,
and then you mentioned biodigester, and that might give some people some pause lately, because that's been something that did not work out in Lowell.
Yes, we have studied that. The interesting thing about biodigesters, though, is that many other communities have them, and they have been unbelievably successful. So there are lots of good examples of effective biodigesters that create significant energy. So it's not, I know that that's in people's mind because of the recent incident in Lowell, but there are many companies that do biodigesters, and there's a lot of cities that have them and are and they're very, very effective.
So no doubts moving ahead or any change of provider or anything like that as you look at a biodigester for that site?
Yeah, it'll be, so we have an authority that will take part of that entire process. So there will be a very clear, thorough, comprehensive process when it comes to the RFP and how that project is bid. And we have a number of experts that have worked on with us to even look at the feasibility of doing it and how much energy it could generate. The interesting thing in our city with the growing amount of manufacturing, particularly beer manufacturing like Founders, we now have the waste that's needed that has the IBUs, and it gets a little technical, that actually can be utilized to create that biodigesters need to create the methane. So we're in a different position now than we were, let's say, 10 years ago, just because of the growing manufacturing in the city around food processing and beer manufacturing.
So that turns out to be a good thing in another way.
That's right. We have the perfect waste to make this happen. So there's some really interesting things happening, but our goal ultimately is to get to that renewable energy goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing that happened today, and I believe you were there, was Grand Action made some announcements with some proposals or plans for downtown Grand Rapids. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, so Grand Action, several months ago, they contracted with a national organization that looks at what cities can do to increase their number of visitors and to be more of a visitor destination. And they came in, they spent actually 6 to 7 months studying a number of aspects of our city and then looking for opportunities where if we made adjustments or enhancements, we could really increase the number of visitors that come to our city every single year. So they had a number of recommendations that they shared today at the Econ Club at lunchtime. I would say the big ones, the big takeaways, I would say, they talked a lot about the river restoration project and the impact that could have on our local economy and on tourism, which I think we all intuitively knew, but it's really nice to have a national expert say, if you restore your river and you also restore the river's edge and create these opportunities to interact with the river, that could be a complete game changer. And I think that was the first time I think collectively we've said, this is so significant and can have a huge impact on our downtown. So that was one. The other one was they talked about the opportunity around soccer and adding a national soccer team and location. They talked about improving and increasing our amateur athletic leagues, particularly around soccer. They talked about the need for greater transportation, specifically around tourism. So if you're a tourist or a visitor that comes to the city, how do you access public transportation if you don't have a car? So those are some of the big ones. But it was an interesting report. I thought it was really well done. I think it captured the assets and the opportunities as well as looked at our challenges. Probably the most bold, interesting idea that I guess I had heard before, but I hadn't really heard in a way that tied it all together. So one of the bold ideas was to add a gondola system for transportation that would connect different parts of downtown and neighborhoods.
Who else does that? Where else might somebody have seen something like that?
Yeah, actually Chicago is looking at it right now.
Okay.
I know that there's a couple places in Denver, or I mean not Denver, in Colorado that have smaller gondola systems, like Telluride has a gondola system, which is public transit.
It's probably going up a mountain too.
Up a mountain. We don't really have a mountain, but we have a few hills. And so it's just really interesting. It was an interesting idea. I think I'll be interested to see the analysis. What would it look like? What would it cost? Of course, those are always questions people have.
You know, one of the sites that gets mentioned every now and then is where the downtown post office is located. And
yes.
that
They talked about that.
River's Edge, too. Mm-hmm. So that could possibly accomplish two different things. If there's a rebuild in that location, it's maybe a bank on the river again as well.
Yeah.
What would that location, I mean, is that available? Is post office making that site available?
As of today, no.
Okay.
But there's been talk, I feel like, for well over a decade about the post office moving. The site itself is about 3.5 acres, and many people, myself included, I think it's a poor use of that site. I do not think it's the best and highest use of that site along the river. So what they talked about today was the opportunity for the convention to expand And they identified 2 potential locations for the convention to expand, one of them being the post office site and one of them being the county and city building. So that was talked about today as an opportunity. I personally would love to see the post office move. The fact that they have their largest processing center in the heart of our downtown, I don't think it's necessary. I think there's lots of opportunities where they could move to. And so my hope is that today continues that conversation and tries to get the post office to consider moving off that site.
Okay, very interesting stuff just
It
developing
is.
today.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Mayor Bliss will be with her guest, at that point talking about affordable housing with Monica Steimel App. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, I am so excited to have with me today Monica Steimel App, who has been not just an active member of our community, but she's been really active when it comes to the issues around housing on many fronts. So I will, first I'll just say thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
And then secondly, for people who don't know you and what you do you want to just share a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So my day job is I work for 616 Lofts in development and in our community relations. And so I have spent much of the last, I would say, 7 years just really starting to understand housing specific to our city of Grand Rapids. As a development company, we work to do mixed use development, always with a focus on housing in the urban core and in the near neighborhoods. So as we started to work alongside the city, and with the neighborhoods, we really wanted to understand what was needed, what was wanted. So as we developed, we were focused on how we could help and how we could bring support. And in doing so, I found a lot of opportunities to get involved. It's a huge topic around growing cities. How do you grow responsibly? What needs to be added? And I think what we're finding here in a city, we have a fast pace of development, which is great. And so the importance of working together and being on the same page with your municipality is super important. So I've just really enjoyed getting involved where I can and understand what the needs are and how we as a developer and as a property management company can provide not only some expertise on the development end and housing end, but also from the direct feedback we're getting from people that are actually living here and experiencing the city.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting. And you and I, we were both recently at a summit, a housing summit that the Grand Rapids Chamber did. Yep. And, you know, when you look at housing in our city, you know, I was a commissioner for 10 years, and it was probably just 8 years ago that on the commission we were scrambling to figure out how to respond as quickly as possible to the foreclosure crisis. Yep. So we had massive foreclosures, we had properties, many properties that were turning in, not just were foreclosed, but were a blight in neighborhoods. Yep. The market was crashing, and fast forward to today, and even about a year and a half ago, and the problem is very, very different. Mm-hmm. And it was about a year and a half ago that there was a gathering of a few hundred people that came together, and we started talking about what do we do to get ahead of this affordable housing crisis that we see on the horizon. And you were there, and from that came a group of individuals that came together to form the Great Housing Strategies. It was well over 50 people. And they broke up into 4 groups. You were on one of the committees. You actually co-chaired one of the committees. I
co-chaired the Housing Finance Committee.
Yeah, and so work was done for probably about a year, and then that plan, those recommendations came to the full commission. The City Commission adopted them late last year, I believe, in December. So why don't we talk first about the work that was done in the Great Housing Strategies, and then we'll talk about some of the work we've been doing this year to follow up on what I see as that was really the foundation.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk, for people who aren't familiar with that work,
Yeah.
why don't you talk about that?
So this City of Grand Rapids Great Housing Strategies, I believe, was put together, was the city's way to answer a lot of conversation in our city about housing in general, understanding where we are, seeing all this development, seeing the change, and maybe just, our way of like, we need to get on the same page. We need to have a conversation where we start defining what exactly it is that we need to do to understand where we're coming from. Because I think with a lot of times growth on this level, it can raise a lot of anxiety, right? And so I commend the city for pulling this together, and I appreciate all of the people that came out to have their voices be heard and to be a part of it. It was an open group that started as, I believe we had a large kickoff meeting in the spring, and then broke off to whoever wanted to be in whichever of the 4 categories that talked about land use, workforce and economic development, financing options, and I believe low income groups. And so, and how to how to really define what we should be talking in each of those, at each of those levels. And so throughout the summer, we met monthly in our collective groups, and city staff and elected officials were there as well to be a part of the conversation and to hear part of the discussion. And I was excited to see. I do wish we had more people at the table, but I always do. But of the people that were there, I think it was helpful to get a lot of the different perspectives we did, from city to private companies to universities and people that just wanted to have their voices be heard. And I think it was appreciated. I do think it was helpful to, I believe we got ourselves to a point to know what to talk about next. But clearly, this is a topic, especially around the whole housing affordability conversation, that cannot, unfortunately, be answered in 6 months.
Yeah.
Although maybe we made an attempt, I don't think we got there. But and I think we all knew that. But I do think that what was by the end, where we made our recommendations to the City Commission, I believe we were able to come up with some guidelines of what it is we were looking for, and maybe recommend what the next steps might be.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. So we, at the City Commission, we got the Great Housing Strategy recommendations, and there were a number of recommendations. Yeah. Some of them, unfortunately, we just aren't able to do. So one of the recommendations was inclusionary housing, which under state law, we don't have the option to do.
Sure.
It's not allowed. But there were other recommendations around planning and zoning and land use decisions, and one of the recommendations was to create an affordable housing trust fund.
Yes.
So that was part of the discussion of the City Commission. I'm really proud that we were able to pass that as a part of our budget back in July. And then after that was passed and supported by the Commission, there was a lot of discussion about, okay, now how do we form this affordable housing fund? What are the guidelines? What's eligibility? How are decisions made? Where does it live? How do we use metrics to make sure that we're having an impact? So after the City Commission passed and approved the creation of an affordable housing trust fund, I appointed a group of 24 different community members from diverse backgrounds to come together to make recommendations to the full commission around the housing trust fund, in addition to other recommendations. So the charge was really twofold. One is to look at the recommendations from the housing strategy, figure out what our top priorities should be, as well as make recommendations for the housing trust fund. So you were appointed to the advisory committee. There's been 2 meetings so far. So do you want to tell a little bit about that process and kind of where things are with that?
Yeah, definitely. So this group is coming together to basically pare down, obviously with a conversation this large, I think honing it in and really getting a smaller group together to actually come up with actionable items and follow through with all the work that we set out to do or recommendations that were made from the housing strategies. And in the meantime, gather more data and more information. And I think one of the main things that we realized from the first set of meetings with the housing strategies was that we need to look into some of these things. So when sometimes other cities or places have in the past used inclusionary zoning, while it may work for some places, does it work for Grand Rapids? Is that the answer? Is it what we need? Or is it something where we can look into other incentives or other options that are available for what we need? And I think what we really found out was that we don't have the correct data to be able to make some of those decisions. And so to be able to have a commitment from this group of appointed people for this committee was, let's now commit to digging in, and we are going to gather data. We're going to put this information together, and we are going to find out what's right for our city to be able to provide housing, more housing, a variety of housing, affordable housing, and just defining what that actually is. So 2 meetings. So again, not enough to get to where we really want to be at this point, but I do feel like that we are being led in a direction to really be a committee that works alongside the city and works alongside you and really support our commitment to housing and housing availability for all here in the city. And I feel like we have a long way to go. I feel like we have a lot of research and data to gather, but I feel like we'll be there.
Yeah, and I should clarify, the committee is really quite diverse and represents different sectors of our community. So there are individuals from banking, from nonprofit housing, to private developers, to universities, to city, to neighborhood groups. So it's a cross section.
It is definitely a cross section, and I feel like it really represents a lot of viewpoints, right? That maybe I might not be thinking the way somebody else will be, and it gives us a lot of there's a lot of dialogue, but healthy dialogue where we're able to take a look at everything from a couple of different viewpoints and understand, and maybe our representation of 20-something individuals will have connections where we can also have some networks where we gather some more information to bring back to the group.
Yeah, and the intent on that was the fundamental belief that in order to truly address affordable housing, we have to all work together. That this isn't
100%.
a problem that the city can solve. It's not a problem nonprofit housing developments can solve. I mean, it truly is going to take all of us.
It is a combined effort, and I mean, even understanding it, takes the effort from everybody. I do think we're very lucky to be a part of a city that's not just a progressive city, but a city that's committed to wanting to dig in, right? Where we're hearing that there's a need and wanting to understand what that need is, and then how can we all work together to be able to meet a goal and to have something and to make Grand Rapids something that is a place that everyone wants to live, right? And so, and I appreciate where we are. I believe we're a city where we listen to voices and listen to what's being said, and I feel that all in all, this has been a very quick process to get to this point, which I think is great. And I think when we start to look at what it takes, even in other cities and with other groups, I think we've gone above and beyond, and I think we're well on our way.
It's a complex issue,
Yeah.
and we've talked a lot about how it's not just about available housing and the cost of the housing, but it's also related to wages and access to opportunity and employment, and so again, all of those are our core issues, and that's why I'm so glad. I know a couple months ago we had Tracy Kaufman from ENTS here talking about Essential Needs Task Force and how they're really looking at all of this intersection of all these core issues around housing, transportation, access to employment.
Well, and where it could seem very easy that it would be just one issue when you're thinking of housing, I think a lot of times we forget that there's so much wrapped around that, right? And so to have the diverse group around the table is so important.
Yeah. So another thing you were recently appointed to is the Grand Rapids Housing Commission.
Yes.
And so that is a very important organization in our city. So those of you who are familiar with it, there's there's a number of developments in the city that the
Yes.
Housing Commission owns, and people
Yes.
live there. They also are they're the organization that oversees our vouchers, Section
Yep.
8 vouchers.
Yep.
And they're an important player when it comes to helping families find housing. So do you want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah,
It's-
definitely. I'm still very new to the commission, but I'm very much enjoying digging in and understanding how the Housing Commission can play a role in the city. And with this conversation about housing, we already provide a lot of housing that's needed, and affordable housing, even specific to seniors and persons with disabilities. And I feel like although it's there, it's obviously still not enough, and we can see by wait lists that that there's more and more. And since the Grand Rapids Housing Commission has the opportunity and knows a lot about that conversation, I'm anxious to have us take a more active role in working with the city and alongside this conversation. And to be able to provide more housing.
Yeah.
So doing more of the great things that they already do.
Yeah, I think they're part of the solution for sure, and I'm glad you're
100%,
willing
yeah.
to serve on that board.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure.
So with that, we're going to wrap this part up, and then we're going to go to questions. So you'll be able to, if you have questions for Monica or you have questions for me, we're glad to answer those. So thank you.
You're welcome.
The Community Media Center Board of Directors
believes in building community through media.
Through radio, video,
citizen journalism, and theater.
We provide media tools,
Training and transmission.
in a safe space
where every voice is empowered.
And has the right to be heard.
Join us and exercise your First Amendment right to free speech as we make Grand Rapids a better community through media.
To City Connection December edition here. I'm Linda Glash with Mayor Rosalind Bliss, along with a citizen working on a number of housing issues. It's Monica Steimel-App. Thank you for being on the show, both of you. Your conversation was quite interesting. I almost feel like we cut you off early. You were in the process of talking a little bit about Housing Commission work, so feel free to continue. You two were deeply in it at that point, but Monica, one question I had for you. You're on at least 3 committees right now, been working on this for a while. How has this work informed your profession as working as a developer?
Very much so, but I think it goes both ways, right? Okay. And so as a developer and as a property management company, we are very much committed to understanding and being the type of developer that can help support the city. And we can help, we know that there's an opportunity right now with development where with our city is with the master plan with GR Forward, where we're in a process of growth and to do smart growth. And so as a developer, obviously, we need to be well informed. We need to do our research. We need to, it's a high risk job, and to do it, we need to make sure that we are working very close. So through the GR Forward process, I served on some of the committees there as well. But it really helped not only inform what the city was looking for, but I think we could also provide some knowledge from what we're seeing. I've also spent some time traveling to some other cities to find out what it is they're doing, how their developers are working with the city, and understanding maybe that there's something in a connection that we can bring back here to Grand Rapids as well. So I'm hoping it goes both ways, but it's been very helpful to us to understand. And it's been great developing relationships with for-profit and nonprofit developers here in the city, and organizations committed to building a great city here where everyone really, really likes to come to the table here and have some needed conversation.
You know, one thing you had said earlier, there was a lot of people at the table, but you felt maybe not as much as you always want. You always want more. What voices do you feel maybe were not in that conversation at that point?
I think one of the, I think what we found a couple of times that we've had these conversations is maybe we didn't have the voice of actually the people that we wanted to serve, right? So maybe the very low income housing recipients, right, that would need the type of housing that we're talking about, that maybe understanding directly from them. We had representatives that work with them, but would it be good to have them as a part of the conversation or the voice? And I think I think since then there have been a lot of times where we've reached out to we as a city. To different groups to understand more. I know the Grand Rapids Housing Commission has, they have resident advisory committees, and it's very helpful to understand what it is that the residents need and want and are looking for. Because ultimately, who are we trying to help, and how can we better do it? And talking to the direct user, I think, is very helpful.
Okay, we got a couple questions queuing up, and I was going to stick to the one that's on housing first, though, since this is your expertise. But we have community reporters that put articles of this sort on the Rapidian. One of them, Amy Carpenter-Lukes, is asking a little bit more about affordable housing, and I kind of wanted to take that term and see if you can define it.
This is a looming question.
It is. Well, we should talk about housing first, too, because Dr. Samberis was here 2 weeks ago for affordable homelessness week. And so anyway, but I'll let you answer the first one about definition, because we have talked quite a bit about this.
Well, and quite honestly, this was a very large part of the conversation that we had in the Great Housing Strategies, was actually defining a lot of these terms, because I think it's very easy to throw out terms that we hear: affordability. What are we talking about? You know, and what is it that we're trying to define? And so affordability is, it's not necessarily an income restricted housing type. What it is to be an affordable housing unit would be something that you can afford, where it's 30% of your income, and that's living expenses, or I believe it's rent and utilities. So that's the definition that we have gone by. There is a list of terms on the city's website under Great Housing Strategies, where there's an extensive list of all the terms and how we are defining them, and we want to define them as others are as well, nationally, so that we're all speaking the same language, which is helpful.
Well, I'm going to read the actual question, because I was kind of winging it there a little bit earlier. It says, how is the City Commission working to address the housing crisis? Have they looked at options like emergency rent control or empowering tenants to form, I'm going to guess, unions or groups or that sort of thing?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, the city formally works in partnership with Fair Housing around tenant rights. And so we actually have a contract with them. We utilize some of our CDBG funding. And so when we find out someone was discriminated against or treated unfairly, we will often refer them to Fair Housing. So we've had that partnership with Fair Housing for years. And they've continued to get support and get funding from the city for that work. Unfortunately, there's a lot of state law that preempts us from doing certain things locally. So we can't do rent control, we can't do inclusionary housing, and along with a number of other things that the state just doesn't allow local units of government to do. In fact, there was a pretty large preemption bill that was passed last year that added additional restrictions on local units of government, and really took away local control around certain issues, including, increasing, passing a local living wage ordinance, and things like we're not allowed to do that anymore based on the bills that were passed last year. So we do have to look at, part of this discussion is what can the city do legally to have an impact? So what can we control or at least try to impact? And so we have Jessica Wood out of our city attorney's office. She's been looking at what can we actually do, because I think sometimes people think we have authority when really we don't. So she's been actually a part of the Housing Advisory Committee, helping to educate the individuals around the table and let them know, look, this isn't legal. Like, we can't do that locally, and so we're looking at that right now. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I would just say, as far as the City Commission involvement, there is a lot of involvement, and I think, and at least being part of the conversations and with the advisory committees, a lot of this was led by conversations started by city commissioners. So I think the involvement is definitely there, and a commitment specifically to follow through with these. With understanding, not only understanding the housing crisis, but what can we as a city do, and then understanding maybe what some of the restrictions are. How can we form some sort of advocacy that the City Commission has talked about at the state level or national level to be able to get the desired results that we need here.
Yeah. I would also add, though, we can do, what is important is that there are things we can do. And so we're looking right now even at our zoning, our zoning code, and Monica can speak to this. I think sometimes people, we've heard the word missing middle a lot. Missing middle can mean multiple things, but it can also mean a certain housing type. And so we've been talking at length about how do we encourage and incent and allow this missing middle housing type, which would kind of be like brownstone. So they're less affordable, they have shared walls, they have zero lot lines and things like that. And so we're looking at, in the Housing Advisory Committee, it's actually broken into two groups. Two committees, and one committee is specifically looking at what are some changes we can make to our zoning code, and what can we do differently in planning. And some of those recommendations came from the housing strategies, and we've implemented some of them, but not all of them. And so this group is fleshing those out, and they're saying, okay, if we allow these types of uses, we can really increase housing, especially for that missing middle type of housing.
Okay. You were talking, when you guys were up there, that within 8 years almost, this swing of the pendulum happened. But
Yes.
even Grand Rapids was a bit ahead of the curve in beginning to think about it. Still, it's a very long timeline. You've talked about how it is a very big boulder to push in a sense. Some of the things have been implemented. What other things what can we look forward to on the timeline, maybe a year from now, 2 years from now? Is the Affordable Housing Fund about ready to be dispersed in certain ways?
Yeah, I think you'll see a number of things, and you're absolutely right. So I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of mayors and to look at, similar to Monica, look at what other cities are doing. And for growing cities, this affordable housing is a problem across the country. And I think we need a multifaceted approach. So we're looking at a number of things. I do think that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund will have an impact. I think us looking at our zoning code and how we can make changes will have an impact. We're also looking at an interesting program that was actually started in Boston called home sharing, where you pair up individuals who are empty nesters and have space in their home with younger, maybe millennials who are new to the field, just starting their career. They're not making a lot of money. They don't have a lot of money, but you have availability of space in a house, and also you have an individual that could use somebody to help them in that home for maybe with yard work and things like that. And so it's called a home sharing program. So actually, Commissioner Kelly has been meeting actively with senior leaders around, is this an opportunity to maybe start to pair up young people looking for a place to live and people who are older who have space within their home. So I'm seeing, in my opinion, some really creative ideas. And then also we're looking at housing types. We're building more smaller units or micro units, but then I think we need more 3-bedroom units for families, especially in neighborhoods around schools. And we're looking creatively at having nonprofit developers partner with for-profit developers and come up with some creative proposals. You're seeing that right here on the west side with ICCF and Rockford. So I think you're starting to see some collaborations that will result in some more mixed income housing types.
Diversifying the housing type is really important, because obviously when you're adding, we can't just have all 1 and 2 bedrooms that are going to support the growth of our city, but where are the families? And we actually just recently added 2 3-bedrooms to one of our developments here on the west side, and they were the first 2 to lease up with families. And it was exciting to see that that we're getting more families, and that once you introduce a new housing type, you're really opening the door to really diversifying housing options available. And then obviously with size and affordability by design, which could be a smaller unit if somebody doesn't need all of the space but would like to find a place to live even downtown. We're seeing a lot of the micro units coming online, but really that diversity of housing type is important.
I'll just add, the other, in my opinion, area of opportunity is to really look at rehab. So there are affordable homes that need rehab, and so how do we make available funding for people to do rehabs where they can afford even home ownership? Buy a home that needs more repairs, but then have access to funds to do that rehab. So again, I in my opinion, there is absolutely no silver bullet, and every mayor I've talked to has said that. So you need this very thoughtful, multifaceted, multi-pronged approach that addresses and it's like taking 1,000 steps forward to get a mile ahead. And that's what I see we're going to have to do with this affordable housing. And I am reminded all the time when I'm talking to neighbors that every neighborhood is different. Yeah. Some neighborhoods, they really need market rate housing. Some neighborhoods really need low income housing. Some neighborhoods need mixed income housing. They're really, even when you look at the city as a whole, my hope is that we're much more intentional and thoughtful and neighborhood specific.
All right. Well, great update and great new information on affordable housing. Our last segment is generally reserved for general questions. We're going to take one of them now, though, because they're on the phone. This is something that we always used to have, a lot of phone calls. But we're going to take this one. I'm going to ask first that the caller turn down the TV so that their volume doesn't come through here in the studio. But it's a call from Pete, and it has to do with pension plans for seniors.
Sure. Hi, Pete.
Hi.
Can't quite hear him.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you there. What was that? Hello?
I'm going to see if we can get Pete's volume up a little bit, because in the studio here it's not quite coming through.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, my question has to do with the side for seniors. When people retire, one of the things that is under attack in Michigan is traditional pension plans. And here in Grand Rapids, for example, the workers at the Rapid are fighting to keep their traditional pension plan, but unfortunately the Rapid Board of Directors, headed by Rosalind Bliss, are actually looking to eliminate that plan. So my question is, my thought is that in order to have affordable housing, of course, you have to have some income coming in, and unfortunately for many people, in retirement, Social Security is not enough. That's why it's great to have a defined benefit plan along with that. What are your thoughts on making Grand Rapids a place where the employees of Grand Rapids, including the employees of the Rapid, are taken care of so that they can afford housing in Grand Rapids?
All right, Pete, thanks for that, and we'll answer that then.
Sure. So let me talk a few things about pensions. So a little bit about City of Grand Rapids. So we worked in partnership with our unions for a number of years, actually. And for all of our general employees, we actually converted over to a 401k, I believe two labor negotiations, so probably about 5 or 6 years ago. So we did, for our general employees, close our defined benefit pension plan and converted over to a 401k for all new hires. And then we also made some adjustments in our pension for police and fire, again, through labor negotiations, and reduced our multiplier there because looking at long-term liability, you really have to think about sustainability and financial sustainability and what benefits you can pay for. There's a lot of talk right now about retiree health care. We at the city, we also closed our defined benefit retiree plan several years ago and converted over to an HRSA, so a retirement savings account. So at the city, we've done a lot of work. A lot of other municipalities have done that as well because of these long-term liabilities that you have to have a plan for, or as your liabilities continue to grow, and we get actuarials that look at projections, and as those liabilities grow, you don't have the funds, you run the risk of not having the funds to pay for the current services because the liabilities are so great. So one thing, we absolutely want to take care of our retirees and have good benefits. And I've worked really hard at the city, especially as a commissioner, with our unions and city staff to do that. At the Rapid, we are currently in labor negotiations with Rapid employees. But just to remind everyone, the Rapid board, first off, I'm not the chair. The Rapid board is made up of a number of municipalities. So there's the city of Grand Rapids, Kentwood, Wyoming, Walker, Granville, and East Grand Rapids. So it's an authority. We all work together because it's a regional system, not a countywide system, even though some want a countywide system. And similar, it's a public entity, and again, there are benefits, and we go into labor negotiations just like we do at the city, and we work with the employees to try to come to a consensus. Unfortunately, I mean, the Rapid and the Rapid board were very committed to the negotiation process, and we're really hopeful that we can come to consensus. But that's the negotiation process, and I have to be very respectful of that process.
All right. Well, thank you for that answer. And I just want to make sure, are we going to take a break soon? Is this great? I want to say thanks to Pete for that question, but Monica as well, thanks for coming on air and speaking with us and sticking around a little extra long.
Okay.
We'll take a break and be back in just a bit.
Getting around downtown Grand Rapids is easier than ever thanks to our city's improved Dash transit service. Hi, I'm Kara Wood, and I'm proud to serve our community as the city's Economic Development Services Managing Director. On September 1st, Grand Rapids introduced a new Park Once downtown district. The Park Once district is part of a comprehensive effort to modernize Grand Rapids' public parking and municipal transit systems. From now on, the Dash downtown shuttle service is free to the public. That means everybody, downtown employees, students, and even out-of-town visitors can simply park their car once, walk to a nearby Dash bus stop, and get on board a Dash bus to reach their favorite downtown destination. Dash buses are now arriving every 7 to 8 minutes, so riding the Dash is fast, easy, convenient, and best of all, it's free. But wait, there's more good news. You can now use the Grand Rapids Silver Line services at no cost when you ride downtown anywhere north of the Wealthy Street station. Keeping Grand Rapids informed about our parking system changes is among our top priority. We're on the web at grparkingchanges.org. Smartphone users can download 2 new mobile apps with real-time information, GR Park and My Stop Mobile. Or call Mobile GR at 616-456-3290. I'm Kara Wood, and I encourage you to start dashing around one of America's best downtowns.
And welcome back to City Connection. I'm Linda Glash here with Rosalind Bliss, Mayor of Grand Rapids, and we're actually in the question phase of the show right now, and we do have one in, and this again from a citizen reporter, Amy Carpenter-Lukes, and it says, what is being done to make sure minority-owned businesses get part of the city development and construction business as Grand Rapids grows?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a really important question. So we're doing a couple things. So the city already currently has, under their procurement process, we give discount bids for any minority-owned business. Or if you're putting in a bid, if you subcontract with minority-owned businesses, you can get a discount bid. So we currently have that. That's been in place for quite some time, but we're in the process of re-examining that and figuring out if we can do better. So we contracted actually with a consultant to come in and look specifically at our procurement process because we want to do better. We're also, we're doing a couple things in our economic development department. So we recently have been working with our economic development department to look at some of our subcontracts and under our, so we do economic gardening. So how do we support minority and women-owned businesses? And so we're looking at the work we've been doing around economic gardening, and then looking at how do we support minority-owned businesses who are startups and entrepreneurs. This is also a piece of the work that we're doing in partnership between the Smart Zone and Start Garden, as we look at what do we need to do, what can we do, what's within our ability to support particularly minority-owned businesses as they get off the ground. So how do we connect them with access to capital? How do we connect them with resources? And then we have a contract, again, through our Economic Development Department to work with the Hispanic Chamber, and they do trainings for Hispanic business owners, and they work with them as they start a business, if they run into struggles. They also can be a liaison with the city if they're having problems with any of our city departments. So this is one of our priorities. If you look at the city's sustainability plan, you'll see a number of goals specifically related to what the city can do to support minority and women-owned businesses. And then I have been working with a number of organizations around what we can do in partnership with the business community to support minority-owned businesses, particularly contractors. We also have what's called a Monday group, where we get together with minority-owned contractors and talk about what we can do better. But we'll soon be hosting a breakfast, myself and an individual from the Right Place, with business owners. There's a statewide group for, what's the name of it? Minority-owned contractors and suppliers, I believe. Sorry, it's a long name. And we'll be meeting with them to talk about what we can do better.
Okay, and then real quick, what's the target? You said we've been doing a lot of work in this area for a while, but we can do better. What's the current target for the percent maybe of minority and women-owned businesses here in Grand Rapids?
Yeah, so we have, I would say there are different goals. One is we want to look at businesses that start. We want them to be successful 2 years out. So we're looking at success, not just how many start, but how many who are actually still in business and considered successful at that 2-year mark. And then we're looking at, internally at the city, we have some dashboards within our HR department and our equal opportunity department, looking at the percentage of minority-owned businesses that we support through our procurement and contracting. I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but I can get that to you. Okay. It's on if you look at our sustainability plan, there's a section that you'll find those very specific targets.
Okay, thanks for that, and thanks for that question as well. We've got another one to get in there. This one actually comes through Reddit, and it's from Tyler. It says, how's the city going to fix terrible parking? Wait lists are like 100 people long for the garages, and they're removing 500 spots later next year. So there are contradictory goals in a sense that kind of make this happen.
Oh yeah, parking, I feel like I talk about parking every day, especially downtown. It is an issue, I want to tell you that. We know it's an issue. We are working hard at we just converted over our name to Mobility Department, and we are looking at a demand management system. You're right, there are some parking spaces that are going to come offline, but we're also in the process of building parking as well. So we'll be building a multi-level parking ramp over in area 484 and 5, so right behind Van Andel, where there's the potential large development. We're also building a multi-level parking ramp, and I believe the latest number I heard is actually 900 spaces. So we will be adding parking. And then we're also trying to manage our parking differently. So we're trying to identify spaces and places where people can park and use Dash. So we just rerouted all of our Dash routes downtown to make that more accessible and easy. Increase the number of times that they circulate to every 7 minutes. And then we're looking at what we can do also to identify other mobility options in the city. So Dash, we're looking right now at potentially doing a study for bike share. We recognize that parking is critical for downtown, both for businesses, for retail, and if we want people to live downtown and they have a vehicle, we need them to have a place to park. So we recognize that, and it's kind of those growing pains of being a large city, is that you have to figure that out. And I think it's gonna take multiple solutions.
Okay. Well, thanks to Tyler, to Amy, and to Pete. Some questions I think even were left on the table a little bit. So we'll close it out for today. This is City Connection with Mayor Rosalind Bliss. I'm Linda Galash. We'll see you next month, actually January 2nd, 2017. Thank you for joining us on City Connection here at GRTV's Livewire, Channel 24.